What's the matter?
My dear pet oyster died. Don't you sometimes feel sorry for all the living things? Why do they all have to get old and die someday? Gosh, I'm so glad I'm a robot.
Actually, not all living things get old and die.
Really? Wasn't death a natural part of nature?
Limited lifespan is not a necessary trait of living things. They probably obtained aging and death through evolution.
What? Who would want that? Were all their ancestors suicidal?
I will explain why living things obtained aging and death. There are many theories, but let me explain some interesting ones. First, I want to show you that aging and death are not necessary. Limited lifespan seems to be programmed into the DNA for most of them, but not all.
But all living things I know die.
There are exceptions. For example, first living things were immortal. That's before they obtained aging and death. Nearly the first 20 billion years of life was immortal. These single-celled organisms did not age, did not die unless somehow killed. They would replicate to two copies of itself forever.
Forever?
In theory, yes. Many bacteria today are like that.
But they are single-celled organisms. They are simple beings. You can't compare them with current living things.
I have current examples too. This is a planarian flatworm. This worm can defy aging. It also has very strong regenerative powers. If cut in half, it becomes two worms. If its head is cut in two, it would have two heads in one body. Of course you can kill it, but it can potentially live forever without aging.
That's a strange worm.
Another example, this is an immortal jellyfish. This jellyfish does age, but it can reverse the aging. After they mature, they can go back to younger self and repeat their life again.
That's the dream of all humans. I bet all humans are jealous of the jellyfish.
More recent example. We don't know for sure about this one, but the research is going on. This is Greenland shark, the longest living vertebrates we know. One shark is estimated to be more than 500 years old.
Why do they live so long?
Scientists found out the sharks do not show typical signs of aging. They have never-changing metabolism. It suggests they might never age.
All right, I get it. First living things never aged and died. Some worms and jellyfish do not age and die. My next pet should be one of them. But why? Why almost all living things age and die?
Limited lifespan is not an inevitable nature of living things. So why then do almost all living things age and die? Here's one way to think about it. It's because it has an advantage in evolution.
That's stupid. Isn't evolution for more survival? Dying just defeats the purpose.
Maybe you are right from an individual's point of view, but evolution doesn't work for the happiness of individuals. You know how some spiders let their babies eat itself after they hatch. That's some twisted evolution for that individual.
So you are saying that aging and death is bad for individual, but good for the species?
Yes, according to one theory.
Why?
It makes evolution faster and better. Let me explain. The first organisms were forever living, unless killed. They reproduced by replicating to two copies of itself. As the organisms evolved, they became multicellular and became bigger. At some point, they obtained two sexes. Instead of just dividing into two copies, male and female mixed their DNA to create new offspring. This meant more changes to DNA. This meant quicker evolution.
I see. It was better than self-reproduction by organisms with no gender.
Organisms that evolve faster will thrive more. Organisms with two sexes won against asexual organisms and became the mainstream. Having two sexes facilitated more evolution and diversity.
But what does it have to do with aging and death?
I'm almost there. Imagine this. You are a human, and 5,000 years old guy is still young and alive. You fall in love with him.
That could happen if humans don't age.
So, you have a baby with a 5,000 years old guy. Think about it. You have the most up-to-date gene that evolved for 5,000 years. But this baby's genes, it's a mixture of the most recent DNA and 5,000 years old DNA.
That kind of resets the evolution of your species to 5,000 years ago.
Exactly. Old people living forever slows down the evolution. You needed old genes to die out for sexual reproduction to work at its best. Species with aging and death programmed into them will evolve faster than species with no lifespan. That's why almost all species evolve to age and die.
Otherwise, species like the planarian flatworm would have been the mainstream, right?
Right. This was a natural consequence of sexual reproduction. You know how people say death is the other side of the coin to life? That's not quite right. Death is actually the other side of the coin to sex. Well, that is one theory.
I'd rather be no gender and immortal.
Well, you are a robot. There are other theories.
Other theories?
Say a species makes babies at age 20. Having a bad gene that kills you at 80 will not affect your reproduction much, would it?
Well, maybe.
Through evolution, DNA is shuffled and new genes are made. There are good genes and bad genes. Good genes are passed on. Bad genes usually die out. If a new good gene makes a bird fly faster, the bird has a better chance of survival. And it will reproduce more offspring with that gene. If a new bad gene makes a bird unflyable, that gene will die out because such a bird can't reproduce. But how about a gene that makes the bird unflyable only at age 50? The bird would already have made enough offspring to pass down its genes by the time.
So, bad genes for old age does not affect reproduction? But if you live longer, you can reproduce more. Isn't that affecting reproduction?
True, but the impact becomes small. If you are making lots of babies in 40 years, which is enough for the species to continue, living to 200 wouldn't have an impact to the species much. To support that, species that produce more offspring at one time actually live shorter. Many insects can produce so many offspring at one go. They live short life because longevity has less impact for their reproduction. On the other hand, mammals can produce only a few offspring at once. So they live longer, but not forever. So a very, very long lifespan without aging would not really affect the reproduction and continuing prosperity of the species. This means that bad genes that kill an individual at old age would just continue to accumulate. Because that bad gene doesn't affect their reproduction, evolution would not work to eliminate them. At the very least, it is inefficient for a species to invest in a gene to combat aging. It's much better to invest in genes that allows more offspring when young.
So, this accumulated bad genes is the cause of aging and death?
Yes.
In this theory, aging and death is not an advantage, but more like a byproduct of evolution.
Well, this was another theory. I think both theories play their roles. But don't you think it's interesting to know that aging and death, which we were taught as a natural part of life, that we have to accept, actually may have a reason for its existence?
I guess future human mad scientists should study the jellyfish and somehow apply their genes to them.
There actually is a lot of research going on to combat aging and ultimately death. Some scientists treat aging and death as something to be cured. Maybe I can introduce some of the research in future videos. Thank you for watching.